it's delectable here. It's like,
Well, there was a long line, so
yeah,
I'm assuming it was good.
yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
Good for
Like,
Kansas City.
that's it. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, and we should probably just remember that sweetness right now with everything going on. So, um, I want to begin our conversation with, before we get into your work, which I'm sure is all corollary. We're getting on the
Yes.
4-year anniversary of the pandemic. How did you get through the pandemic, and how did it change you?
How did I get through the pandemic and how did it change me? The pandemic probably helped me launch my book even more so. But the pandemic was actually got me closer to my community. I volunteered. I have, there's many parts. I have a very strange brain. I have this very technical computer, process oriented brain. And then I have this other creative side. So it just, they say you're one or the other. Well, I'm oddly too. And it got me closer to the community, but then it also sparked my need to help people in the mental health framework because having dealt with my own journey and having arrived at what I had been trying to launch into this what is contained in my book, it really helped to solidify that need and to push forward. And it also changed me financially. So I had been making money, hand over fist, quite, I shouldn't say hand over fist, but it was easy to come by. And I had a change in income because my business, the one that had been my sole means of income, not, well, my husband's make money, but the point is that that had dried up substantially and still is fairly dry. And that has to do with the change in economics that happened because of the change in buying habits, and real estate got greatly impacted, commercial real estate. So um, that's that's really how it hit me. But emotionally, I think it just made me more driven to try and help people with what I've created for myself, and as we'll get into later.
So, yeah, and that's kind of what I want to get to right now, what you exactly do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders. It's career day, and one of the kids says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer that child?
That's really interesting that you say that because that's even where I want to get to. And that is our emotions can be very confusing sometimes. And we have a hard time connecting to them. Like we don't know how we feel. And what I try and do is help people to understand how we feel. Because just like we have a sensory system to how we see and how we hear, we learn about those five, we actually have more. And one of those sensory systems is called interoception. So, because that's a big word and it's hard for people to understand, we do understand the word interception. And interception is when you catch something, right? Like it's going out there and you get between its target and you catch it. Well, when we receive the information that our body is sending us and get better at interpreting it, because it's like any language, we need to learn how to be a better active listener. And when we get better at identifying those feelings, that gives us a better way to understand our feelings in the moment. So when you think about like, what's the best way to know how to respond, to not have to think about it for too long, to know like instantaneously. And so this is what I'm trying to help a third grader to a 70-year-old understand better, is those interoceptive feelings, how to catch them and identify them better.
So, what did you want to be in the third grade? What was your dream?
You know what? I hate to say this, but I really didn't have one. I was raised in a religion where in 1975, the world as we knew it was going to come to an end. And so I was not supposed to go to high school. And I
Oh,
believed strongly. So what year was I in? I'm 61, so I have to think back of what year it was in third grade, but it wasn't close to 75. It had to have been in the 60s because I would have been in high school in the 70s. So Yeah, I didn't have one because I thought the world was going to end as we know it.
So how did you transition from that into who you are today and move into this? uh, I guess how did you transition out of that, and what were the seeds that made you become who you are today and make you go after this profession you're in?
It was life quakes, right? Like most of us, we learn the most when we can take really tough experiences. And I don't mean to trigger anyone, but I had been sexually abused as a young girl by someone within my religion. I had, and it got kind of swept underneath the floor. In fact, that whole story is really interesting how it re-revealed itself to me. I also grew up and drinking was a problem in my household. My mother actually died of alcoholism, and yet I couldn't come to face the fact that she was an alcoholic for many, many years. It was all part of that holding things down, like not coming emotionally to grips with it. And I think that the kicker, there was a few other things, but the one thing that just took me into the direction that I am now was a divorce. I was fabulously in love with my first husband, and I just thought he was my forever. I put him through school. We had two businesses together, and it was the oldest story in the book. He was a chiropractor. He had an affair with the front desk girl because she took better care of him than I did, which was totally wrong. And I was like, oh my God, I have got to keep this from happening to me again. Because even in that situation, I was still being willfully blind to what was going on. So I went on this quest to figure out how can this stop? And I discovered I can't. I can't keep it from happening again, but I can get better at facing my feelings. I can get better at putting up boundaries. I can get better at knowing myself and understanding myself better. And that evolution started with my first book. It's called The Perfect Heart, Creating and Maintaining Love Life Balance, because I knew my whole life had been out of balance. I was all about him and not about me. And either we were always together or apart. We just didn't have any balance. But as I went in this continuing journey, I read a book called How Emotions Are Made, The Secret Life of the Brain. Totally, totally changed my world because it gave me a system. It helped me to understand the system that the brain has. And that is that we live in a world of prediction. Everything we see, like you looking at me right now, is a prediction of the brain. We don't see what we see what the brain interprets. And also, our emotions are a prediction of the brain. Our thoughts are a prediction of the brain, unless we are more consciously involved. But because of how the body works, I mean, like if we had to be more present, like to be super, super present all the time, it would be energetically inefficient. So the brain has this thing, it wires our experiences so it can use them again in the future. And that's what it uses to launch them. And then I said, okay, so I need to be more proactive at creating what I call the recipes or the experiences that I want the brain to use in the future to be more proactive and then implement the things that helps the brain to implement my changes. And so that ended up being what my book is about.
So who's been a hero for you in your life?
The author of that book for sure.
Yeah.
She is a huge hero. Her name is Lisa Feldman Barrett. She's the creator of the theory of constructed emotions, and that was, like I said, extremely life-changing.
Yeah.
And other heroes are my mom because she didn't know how to deal. She had a lot going on that she had to use alcohol to get through. And even to the end, I mean, it was her crutch. And so I knew that, like, to go through life and not end up like her, I had to make that change to make her proud. And then the other hero is my niece, Rebecca. She's autistic and she is a great lesson in interoception and how difficult it can be for people with special needs, and yet they have the ability to develop these skills. So if they can, we can. And she is a she's in my book a few times because her struggles are much more than we could ever have in life, and yet she serves as an example of love and of development and of just pure beauty.
My son's on the spectrum. He's 19, so I've been in the special needs community for quite a while, and I agree. From the parental perspective, I can't imagine experiencing this life without seeing it through him and what he's exposed me to. And there's so many more things that they have to do and accelerate and evolve into because of the way the world is. And yeah,
Yes.
it's pretty enlightening.
Have you ever heard of Kelly Mailer? She's an
Mm,
occupational therapist, and I use her as an example in the book of someone who uses interoceptive training. She actually has a book called The Interoceptive Curriculum that she uses to help other occupational therapists who work with the neurodiverse. I didn't even know about this, and she helped me to understand this even better, is that emotions come in two flavors. We have the emotions that we're more familiar with. We're actually more familiar with both of them. We just don't think of them as emotions. So there's the emotions that we would call love and sad and tired and all these. Those are called homeostatic emotions. So homeostasis is the brain's trying to keep us within a framework of health. So if there's this range, and it's always doing activities that we're unaware of that keep us in balance. But there's times where it makes us aware of it, like when we're cold. So we may be prodded to get under a blanket or put on a jacket. And those are homeostatic emotions. Or we're hungry, so we eat. We feel pressure in our bladder. You get the idea. And then there's the affective emotions, is what they're called. And that's happy, sad, those types of emotions that we think of more with the word emotion, but they both exist and they both use the same body parts, meaning we will have the sensations in the same place that we might feel sadness, that we also might feel tired. And so we get these confusion between the two. And can I give you an example?
sure.
Two really come to mind. And one was this recently, I saw this video of this father, and I kind of dislike how much people are having conversations with their kids and they're videotaping them. It feels unpersonal, not personal. But she was crying. He's like, "Why are you sad?" And she's just like, "I don't know." And she's just crying, crying, crying. And then he tells her, or she figures out, she self determines. She goes, "Well, I think I'm going to eat and watch my favorite show." So she goes to eat and watches her favorite show. But I never heard in the conversation ever, "No, you're not sad, you're hungry." That feeling that you have is hunger, not
Hmm.
sadness.
Hmm.
And so if we teach that someone that when they're feeling sad, they eat, that creates potential for an eating disorder, right?
Yeah,
Excuse me. I'm just going to get a quick water.
sure.
And and so And so when you look at circumstances like that, that's what I'm talking about,
Yeah,
learning how to distinguish those feelings. I
sure.
had a little girl who was in pain because she lost her tooth and she saw blood and she's crying. And I'm like, "Why are you crying?" She said, "I'm bleeding, and I'm like, blood doesn't equal pain. And as soon as she heard that, it doesn't, I'm like, no, it doesn't always mean pain. And she was fine.
Yeah.
So it's being able to understand those influences into our feelings and to distinguish them that makes us more resilient.
So, what is your motivator to help people and to ultimately evolve as a person?
Every time I we before this recording, we were talking about that shooting. Think about the people who get mad at just like the littlest thing can set them off. And it could be because they've bottled up a lot of feelings that have nothing to do with that moment and they don't address them. Or it could be because they have a feeling inside and they still can't identify it. So they don't know the difference between internally feeling them, between being irritated and being enraged. It's like a hot pepper. You have peppers that aren't so hot, and you have peppers that are habanero or whatever, the ghost pepper that will just burn your mouth. We have that kind of distinction in that word anger that gets used for every kind of pepper, if you want to say it that way. So helping people to distinguish those emotions helps them in their reactions to events. And to me, that's gigantic, but it also makes for better decision making. And it helps you to um, be okay. I want people to be okay with their feelings in the sense that I can feel them and identify them. And as bad as I think that they're going to be, they're really not usually as bad as we think. We have this predictive nature of the brain, right? So getting to understand that your predictions aren't always right. There's a lot of prediction error, or that we can get it wrong and reframe it to get it right in the future.
So, of all of the things that you've done and overcome and become in your life, what are you ultimately the proudest of?
This book.
Yeah.
Yeah. I without a doubt, like there's so much heart in this book trying to take something that is really complicated and use stories and use my own examples, give people tools, because like how can you go from not feeling connected to your feelings at all and then just go to doing it? Like you need to have a progression. And so I offer that. Like I want people to know that it's okay, and that there's just there's a pathway. I mean, honestly, I think that my book is just my crowning achievement. I've done a lot of things, and I think that this is the most important thing I've ever done.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you. There's all these pockets of people in your life, family, friends,
Mhm.
clients, colleagues,
Mhm.
readers, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
And that has changed a lot. So I will say today, my perception of me is first and foremost love first. This is a big, I'm not going to say a huge change, but in how I love and how I identify love, it has changed a lot. I have really grown in that. So I would say I'm, I try to be love first. I also feel like I'm very compassionate, and I feel that I have really, really gotten great at being less judgmental. I was very judgy. And
Yeah.
so, and I think that I come off as confident and intelligent and, pleasant. I've always been someone that people can talk to, and I want to leverage that now in this last career. I've had many careers in my life, different things I've done, and in this last career of mine, I want to leverage that ability for people to share, uh, and have them be comfortable with sharing with me to make a big difference.
So if anyone wants to pick up the book, hire you, learn more about you, reach out, what's the best way for people to do that?
Kimkorte.com, KIMKORTE.com.
That makes it all easy. One-stop
It
shop.
really does. It
Yeah.
does. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Kim, this has been great. Thank you so much for opening up. Thank you for your story. Best of luck with everything. I appreciate
Well,
it.
thank you, Joe. It was lovely to meet you.
Great to meet you.